Thank you for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin with the latest on Iraq. The Senate last night gave President Obama the authority and funding to train and arm moderate Syrian rebels to fight ISIS. However, there's still a major debate over the president's strategy to defeat the terrorist group. All this while the humanitarian crisis continues. The Senate followed the House in giving President Obama the green light to help Syrian rebels fight ISIS.
The strong bipartisan support in Congress for this new training effort shows the world that Americans are united in confronting the threat from ISIL, which has slaughtered so many innocent civilians.
But there are still questions and skepticism about how or if the president's plan will work.
Our ambassador to Iraq and Syria says, we don't have a clue who the moderates are and who the jihadists are. And even if they tell you they are the moderates, oh, we love Thomas Jefferson. Give us a shoulder-fired missile.
In addition to members of Congress, some military leaders have raised questions about the president's strategy against ISIS, including retired Marine General James Mattis. He told the House Intelligence Committee, banning boots on the ground is, quote, tying the military's hands. Secretary of State John Kerry was on Capitol Hill defending the president's strategy. The debate came as ISIS released new video showing a British citizen who was kidnapped 2 years ago in Syria. Journalist John Cantley is seated alone at a desk in a dark room. And a series of bomb and mortar shell attacks in and around Baghdad killed at least 36 people. And an assault that showed ISIS poses a threat to the capital of Iraq, in addition to the large parts of the country the terrorists have already taken, displacing tens of thousands of people. Operation Blessing International is in northern Iraq, in Erbil, helping many of those people, Christians living in tent camps, churches, and abandoned buildings. Volunteers distribute food, including rice, beans, eggs, salt, and more, with relief supplies coming, such as blankets, diapers, stoves, and more, for those who have suffered unimaginable persecution. Operation Blessing International's David Darg said, these Iraqi Christians are some of the most beautiful and loving people I have ever met. For Operation Blessing to be here, letting them know they are not alone, is such a privilege. President Obama has pledged $46 million in new assistance to Ukraine's military, but he stopped short of granting President Petro Poroshenko's urgent request for lethal aid to help his country defend itself against Russian-backed separatists. The two leaders met Thursday. Poroshenko expressed gratitude for the political and financial support he's received, and he said it's crucial the world help his country to stand up to Russia.
The war that these young men are fighting today is not only Ukrainian war. Everybody should understand that. It is Europe's, and it is Americans' war too. It is the war for the free world. For the free world. They need more political support throughout the world. They need more military equipment, both lethal and non-lethal. Urgently need.
Poroshenko called for Russian troops to withdraw from his country's territory and for hostages to be released immediately. Sierra Leone is enforcing a 3-day lockdown in an emergency measure to fight the Ebola epidemic. People stocked up on food ahead of that nationwide shutdown. 6 million residents will be forced to stay in their homes while volunteers search door to door for Ebola victims. Health officials have prepared treatment centers in anticipation of the extra patients arriving during and after this shutdown.
You know, we have this 3 days shutdown. And we know most of these people, particularly the suckling mothers, the pregnant women, aged, most of them are not employed. So that is one way of helping them to get themselves all right throughout the holidays.
The World Health Organization says Ebola is spreading faster than before. It reports more than 700 cases emerged in West Africa in just 1 week. The outbreak has killed more than 2,600 people so far, including more than 100 healthcare workers. Scotland has voted to remain part of the United Kingdom, dashing some Scots' dreams of becoming an independent nation. More than 85% of Scots turned out to vote, with 55% voting no to independence and 45% voting yes. British political leaders spent weeks campaigning to convince Scottish voters to stay, arguing Scotland is better off as part of the United Kingdom. Britain's main political parties offered to give Scotland more powers if they rejected independence. Prime Minister David Cameron says they will follow through with those promises. Congressional outrage is growing in the wake of a GAO report showing that Obamacare is using federal funds to pay for abortion. Paul Strand reports now on recent hearings on Capitol Hill.
These legislators and pro-life leaders were highlighting a new Government Accountability Office report showing massive federal funding of abortion is on the way under Obamacare.
1,036 Obamacare plans cover elective abortions and are subsidized by taxpayer funds.
You not only can't keep your doctor, you also can't avoid supporting abortion if you're a taxpayer in this country, given Obamacare.
The Hyde Amendment, passed by Congress in 1977, has made it illegal for taxpayer money to pay for abortion, and President Obama pledged that would continue.
Obama promised back, left, up and down, right, left, that abortion would not be included in the health care law and that Americans could be assured on his promise that the Hyde protections that we've known since the late 70s would still be covered in the health care law. Well, unfortunately, we know now that President Obama has broken his promises.
People don't like to be deceived. They don't like to be lied to. And that's exactly what has happened here.
These massive subsidies for abortion covering plans amount to a sharp break from decades of federal policy under the Hyde Amendment.
It is completely, totally, absolutely contrary to the Hyde Amendment.
Smith and other pro-life legislators spearheaded a move in the House to fix this, but the Senate won't take it up.
Polls have shown that Americans do not want abortion coverage in their plans, and they also do not support federal funds for abortion. The best solution would be a simple and clean fix. Enact H.R. 7, which is the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act. It does basically what it says in the title. It prohibits federal funds from going to abortion.
But Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has prevented Senate action on identical legislation.
Senator Reid, when he was in the House, was among the most pro-life members of the House of Representatives. His record was identical to that of Henry Hyde.
In the spirit of that record, Smith asked Senator Reid to get out of the way and let the Senate make it so taxpayer money can't be used to pay for abortion. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
NASA's asteroid protection program isn't doing its job too well. The program is supposed to identify potentially dangerous space rocks that could hit the Earth. But the agency's inspector general says the program needs to be better organized and managed. The asteroid protection program was supposed to find 90% of the objects close to the Earth bigger than 460 feet across by the year 2020. But so far, it's only found about 10%, and it is not expected to meet the 2020 deadline. Indonesia's Mount Sept volcano became violently erupted this morning, scattering ash over surrounding villages in central Java. There are 7 villages only 4 miles from the volcano, and officials have made preparations to move the nearly 24,000 residents in case the volcano becomes even more dangerous. The eruption started several days ago, but have grown increasingly violent. Java is Indonesia's main island. It includes the capital, Jakarta, and is home to more than half of the country's 240 million people. Well, coming up, are soldiers free to practice their faith? They're guarding our freedoms while theirs are under attack. Religious rights advocates told Congress Thursday there is a direct link between religious persecution and terrorism. And a Nigerian human rights attorney even testified terrorism has spread because the Obama administration has downplayed religion in its foreign policy. Emmanuel Ogabe says the State Department continues to minimize the plight of Christians in Nigeria. Ogabe argues the administration has a see no jihad, hear no jihad, say no jihad policy when it comes to ISIS in Iraq and Boko Haram in Nigeria. He reported Boko Haram just turned one of the Christian girls it's captured into a suicide bomber just a few weeks ago. He also reported last year at this time, Boko Haram set up a roadblock and then used chainsaws to behead more than 150 Christians. Religious freedom is under fire in the U.S. military. This year, an Air Force Academy cadet was forced to remove a Bible verse from his personal whiteboard. The Navy removed Gideon's Bibles from guest lodges, but then returned them. And last year, the Pentagon said soldiers can be prosecuted for sharing their faith. Joining us now with more is Travis Weber from the Center for Religious Liberty at the Family Research Council. Travis, what is the most shocking example of religious freedom being restricted by the U.S. military you have?
Yeah, I think you listed several of the most shocking examples we have to date. The fact that a cadet could be in essence, come under pressure and be forced to remove a verse from his whiteboard that's a forum for his expression and free expression of religious views is very problematic, whether it occurs at the Air Force Academy or anywhere else where such a forum is open to expression of views. Other problematic examples include privately placed Bibles on military installations being removed because of concerns involving Establishment Clause problems or people being offended. These are not things we should be seeing in our society, much less in our military today.
When did this antagonism against religious freedom begin to take off in the military?
It's tough to pinpoint exactly. I think generally speaking, it has really accelerated over the past 5 or 10 years as militant atheists seeking to scrub any religious expression from a public square have gotten involved in what they see as impermissible religion in the public places of America, including the military. This is something that should not be allowed to pass. And it should be pointed out that no one is for pushing or coercing religious views on anyone. We simply want all to be free to express themselves and express their religious beliefs in the public square and provide an open, free marketplace of ideas. Unfortunately, there are some who are very hostile to this taking place at all and have taken great pains to remove all expression of religion from public places.
Is there anything they can do to turn the tide and establish better religious protections in the military?
Yes, Congress has paid attention to this matter. Congress has held hearings from time to time. Chairman McKean of the House Armed Services Committee has put religious liberty in the military front and center. And, Congress has responded with laws requiring that free expression of religion in the military be protected. The Department of Defense has come out with regulations supporting that free expression and implementing language for that free expression. However, we really want the other branches, the branches of the services and the Department of Defense to provide clearer language, clearer guidance, and ensure that in addition to guidance at the top, that this guidance at all levels of command is put forth and commanders understand that they're to be part of a climate which inculcates free expression of religious ideas in the military.
Well, so Travis, what about the White House? Is the Obama administration doing enough to protect religious freedom in the military?
Taking into consideration the need for good order and discipline amongst the troops, it's important that the White House prioritize the protection of all to express their religious beliefs, regardless of what those beliefs may be, in the military context.
All right, Travis Weber of the Family Research Council, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next, a secret war inside Ukraine targeting Christians for torture and execution. Hear who's behind the attacks, and it may just surprise you. The fighting between Ukraine and Russian separatists has killed more than 2,500 people this year, and Ukrainian Christians suffered intense persecution during the fighting, often with deadly consequences. George Thomas brings us this exclusive report from eastern Ukraine.
It's a scene that has played in Olena Velichko's head over and over. Pro-Russian rebels took over her hometown in early April. Her husband Vladimir told her to take the kids and leave the city.
He took us to the train station and we said goodbye. He said, "I love you." He kissed me and kissed the children and left.
Several days later, her life and that of her 8 children, ages 2 to 16, suddenly turned upside down. It was June 8th, Pentecost Sunday. The church was half empty. That's because the city was under assault by both pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian army. Once the church service ended, everybody made their way to the front of the church to go home. But then the unimaginable happened.
The church called us and said my husband, along with 3 other believers, had been taken by men who were waiting outside the church.
Can you tell me what happened when you came out? Alexander Gaivoronsky, a church deacon, was there that Sunday morning.
The men wore masks and had machine guns. They told the 4 Christian men to get into their cars.
The rebels took the pastor's sons, Ruvim and Albert Pavenko, Viktor Brodatsky, and Olena's husband, Vladimir. Multiple sources tell CBN News what then happened to the 4 Christian captives. First, rebels took them outside the city and severely tortured them. The next day, June 9th, the men were put in a car and told to drive away. Then minutes later, they were recaptured and shot multiple times. Olena's husband was burned in the car.
I don't hate my husband's killers. It's easy to start asking questions, why did this happen? But if I keep thinking about this, it will only wear me out.
That same day, rebels burned down the largest furniture factory that belonged to Ruvim and Albert Pavenko's father. It had become clear rebels were targeting the city's evangelical community.
I never thought that in the 21st century, in a free country as Ukraine, it was possible to experience this level of persecution.
Sergei Dimidovich, a top evangelical leader in Slavyansk, says Christians faced constant threat.
The separatists saw Protestant Christians as enemies. They viewed us as a cult.
But the persecution was just getting started.
All the Protestant churches in the city were either taken over by rebels or forced to close. We are forbidden to meet in services, and the leadership forced to leave or be under risk of arrest.
And the persecution was spreading far beyond just the city. Throughout the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as rebels gain more territory, assaults against evangelicals are growing. 2 pastors told CBN News they were arrested and tortured for their faith. What would happen if you went back to Donetsk?
If I went to Donetsk today, I would be arrested at the first checkpoint and put in jail. The last time I was in prison, they beat me up so badly, but I kept preaching the gospel and telling them to repent.
Many believe the persecution is linked to pressure from the Russian Orthodox Church, and the pro-Russian rebels are only happy to do their bidding.
When I was in prison, a rebel soldier told me that they have an order to kill all Christian pastors who are not part of the Russian Orthodox Church.
While that has forced some to go underground, others are deciding to stay.
Many heroes are born out of this conflict, men and women who are boldly sharing their faith and helping those caught in this war.
Olena Velichko says there's not a day that goes by that she doesn't think of that last goodbye, that final kiss she had with her husband at the train station. But she is unwavering in her faith, trusting God to take care of her, the children, and Ukraine.
People often ask me how I'm doing. I tell them about a mighty God who can heal our hearts. Maybe not as quickly as we would like it, but the process is going on, and the prayers of people around the world help. The biggest thing you can do for me is to pray for me, for my family, about the future of my children and my country.
George Thomas, CBN News, Eastern Ukraine.
Well, the weekend is here, so you may be looking for a little family-friendly entertainment. Here with our regular movie review is Bob Waliszewski from Plugged In Online. That is the entertainment review department at Focus on the Family. So, Bob, let's start with Maze Runner. What's that about?
It's set in the future, and it opens with a young man, teenager named Thomas, in this elevator. He gets, the elevator opens, he's out in the middle of a glade, and he's surrounded by these gigantic concrete walls. Turns out there's about 3 dozen or other teenage guys there, eventually a teen girl, and their memories have been erased. They don't know who built these concrete walls, and it's not just a single wall, it's a maze around them, and the maze changes every night. The doors open in the morning, they send a runner through to try to map out. For 3 years, some of them have been there that long, have been trying to figure out how to escape. There's some good messages in this film, messages about courage and self-sacrifice, but quite frankly, it's probably the most unsatisfying film that I've been to this year, because I felt it was like an almost 2-hour commercial to set up the next film. The things like who's behind this maze? Why is there a maze? How come somebody didn't just put him in prison? All those questions weren't answered by the end of the film. When you add on from a family perspective that there's quite a bit of violence. There's these spider-like mechanical creatures that would give younger kids nightmares, quite a bit of foul language, a lot of moments of peril, apparent suicide. It gets a mere 2.5 out of 5 for family friendliness.
All right, well, right now, the #1 movie in the country is No Good Deed, and it looks pretty intense. Is that one okay for families?
You know, this one gets an even worse rating, I'm sorry to say. It gets a 1.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. We were introduced to a convict. He's trying to get parole. He's denied. The next thing you know, he overcomes a van driver and a guard, kills them both, shows up at a woman's door in the pouring rain and asks to use her telephone so he can call a tow truck. Uh-oh, should she let him use the phone? Should she let him in? Of course, we all know, no, you don't let him in. And then the rest of the film is pretty much a cat and mouse game with him after her and her running through the house and trying to protect her children, which is the good part of the film. But the bad part of the film is the violence is pretty grisly. The language is quite harsh at times, and there's some sensuality to boot that keep this one out of the family-friendly perspective quite significantly.
All right, well, there are a few solid family films still out in theaters right now. Quickly remind us, what are they again?
Oh, yeah, we got 100-Foot Journey, we have The Giver, we have The Identical, we have As the Game Stands Tall, and last week's Dolphin Tale 2, which was the #2 film in the nation, is very family-friendly. So, although the 2 new ones aren't, those 5 still have great possibility.
Yeah, happy to say I've seen them all, and they were good. Thank you, Bob.
You betcha, Ephraim.
All right, that is going to do it now for CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.